Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to the way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. I am Captain Frodo, and I will be your guide and gracious host along the way. I have not recorded for a while. Some of those last episodes were recorded in and out of sequence, and we have been out of our regularly scheduled programming where we talk about the way and everything. We have had a poetic mid-season finale, and before that we had a long interview conversation with myself and my collaborator Jay Gilligan, and things have come to an end in this last time. Shows that I have been directing and creating together with other artists. Reflex has finished its run in New York City, and we got some great feedback. I've only seen it online. Of course, I didn't get to. I've seen the show online, which was streaming around the world. Lots of amazing feedback, of course, from jugglers, but also from all sorts of other artists who have found it great. Some famous people. Neil Patrick Harris came, and his main thing that he talked about to Jay after the show was that he found it so non-derivative. He couldn't think of anything to compare it to or whatever, and I thought that was just an extraordinarily great thing to hear. And also Derek Delgadio, who some of you might know as the magician who made the show In and of Itself, which I believe is streaming on Netflix in Australia at the moment. Absolutely worth checking out. Somebody who is taking magic in a crazy, beautiful and emotional, in-depth journey in a new kind of way. New in the way that anything is not new under the sun, but very inspiring to see. And it was one of two works that Jay Gilligan and myself spoke about, In and of Itself, and also Ricky Jay and his 52 Assistants, which was an HBO special back in the day. A gorgeous show as well. Or two magic shows, funnily. We're both working away at a juggling show, and two of our references that we sort of kept in our mind was Eric Delgadio's show and Ricky Jay's show. Now, since that time, Ricky Jay has passed away, but Eric Delgadio has not passed away, and it was a little triumph that Eric Delgadio actually came and saw the show in New York City, and then wrote about it on Instagram, and he said, and this is a quote, "I just witnessed one of the most inventive and ambitious shows I have ever seen. It's called Reflex, and it's in Brooklyn, and it's great." So that was really nice, and there were more excellent and very exciting things, but I think we're going to have another conversation with Jay about that. And the other show that has finished its run that I was working on was a one-man circus by Morgan James, and that went on to win 3 awards during the Fringe in Perth in Western Australia. Of course, they were hard hit by the very recent the Omicron and everything came very late there, so they were hit hard by the pandemic again, or whatever, due to them having had really strict border closures and whatever. Anyway, the show won 3 awards, and the final award that it won, after having won sort of weekly awards, was that it won the children's event award. So best children's event of the entire Fringe was won by a one-man circus, and I couldn't be prouder of Morgan James and his show. It's such a lovely thing to see, and I really hope we can have him on the show here and talk to you all, that we can have a conversation a la me and Jay, just talking about the creative process and what it's like to try to add more depth and more heart, which was a key word in the initial pitch for Morgan for me to join him or so. get more heart into it, and we did, and we got a bunch of really cool things, and I've heard stories of his, and I would like for you to hear them too. On a more personal note, I have moved out of the basement where we have been living in my father, the great Santini's basement. We have been living there with my family since we left America, and we have moved out of the underground where the notes for what's forming the core of the way, as I lay it out for you and lead you along it and lead you along with me on it this way, that we're going to continue on the next chapter 17 of the way today. But these notes from the underground were all written down there, but now we've moved out of the underground. I got a spectacular view over the ocean. There is rocks sticking out, and there are an ancient lighthouse within view, and there's so many rocks out here. And there's a terrible shipwreck a few years ago. There's so many rocks, and most of the rocks now sticking out of the ocean here is got little, not lighthouses, but sticks with lights on them so that even if you're a little bit off course, you won't hit it. So it's a sort of array of mini lighthouses, and some of the islands further out have actual lighthouses on it, and a lighthouse real close. And so got a couple of windmills and a dockyard right down, so there's some industry down to the left, but out to the right there is the vast expanse of the ocean all the way out to the horizon, and somewhere beyond the horizon lies Scotland. So my view is broad, and the horizon has moved far away after almost 2 years of looking out the window into the bushes and not really seeing the sky. It's lovely to be back out in the vast expanse. Very nice indeed. I have finished a 3-week tour of school shows. I was doing shows at all the schools at a neighboring commune or neighboring district here, and did 2 shows a day for 3 weeks, and I was really quite amazing. Going to some small schools out in small places are such a tremendous response. They were ready for the Magic Circus and for Captain Frodo's brand of showmanship. It was such a delight. I did not expect it to be so much fun to get up in the morning at 8 o'clock. Well, I'll get up earlier, but to get out of the house at 8 o'clock and drive out and set up my gear and then pack it all up and move to the next one. It was a tremendous delight, and I was very happy. And I'm now working on new material for a new Magic Circus. I'm working on a pirate-themed family show, and life is slowly returning to normal here in Norway, as all restrictions have been dropped, and the wording that the government is using is that all travel and all behavior is not restricted. We are back to what it was like before the pandemic, is what the government says. So that's certainly a good step forward. Denmark and a few other places have adopted the same thing. That's not to say that people aren't getting sick, and there's still some people suffering, of course, but there might be a light at the end of the tunnel. And as I was hoping a long time ago, that this light at the end of the tunnel is going to come closer and closer, and it's going to turn out to be a spotlight, and it's going to be shining on me and on you and on all those amazing performers out there who I know are listening. And I hope that spotlight will be shining on you on a stage somewhere soon, and we'll gain some sort of normalcy back in the plying of our craft and the spreading of the joy that we all partake in. All right, with that, we are going to take a new step along the way of the showman. We're going to look at the one who faces the other way, a pivotal phrase in my unfolding and uncovering of the way of the showman. So, without further ado, let's take it to the way. the one who faces the other way. The illuminated showman is someone who faces the other way, as the illuminated showman's manifesto tells us. Now, after the I am declaration in the manifesto, which we looked at last episode in depth in the cosmic explorations, the next picture we face in the text is one of a human being facing a group of others. This is what opens the illuminated manifesto proper. This is, as far as I see it, the primal state or the shape of showmanship. One facing the others. It has happened since human beings sat around the primordial fires in the Paleolithic caves. The shaman would stand up and face the others in the tribe to share with them what he had to show them, what he had seen in worlds beyond ours, in his mind or imagination, or in the tribe's myths, legends, and stories. This structure of human organization, one standing before a group of others, is ancient and creates the right conditions for the fiery process of showmanship to illuminate the dark. In the following we will explore the meeting of two, and through this meeting of one facing the others we will get the formation of a third joint experience. So, this joint experience is a meeting, communication, connections. This is what this next bit is about. I'm just quietly putting away my keys there, dangling. I got such a big bunch of keys now that I have a new house with many doors. Anyway. Now, to face others is about communication. It's about sharing and about connection. When we meet someone, not just randomly passing someone in the street, but stand face to face in an engaged manner, there forms a connection. At first tentative and exploratory, but if the meeting continues, the connection deepens, and in facing each other there is communication. What one says and does has an impact on the other, and from this a response forms in the other. And when the other responds, we have the beginnings of a dialogue. The response triggers a new response as it receives it, and so on. A dialogue is on its way. It's a seed which, under perfect circumstances, is nurtured by both parts. The connection that arises in a meeting forms from the tension of communication that happens when one meaning-bearing entity faces another. We most commonly think of meetings as the coming together of two or more people. They can meet by chance when both want to borrow the same library book, or they can meet as old friends. Random encounters is like a proto-meeting or a meeting in embryo. What exists in potential in the fleeting encounter exists in full bloom in the proper face-to-face meeting, which always involves a kind of dialogue. The kinds of meetings which takes on this dialectic form can be expanded to all works of art, also those which are not performative, where an artist stands before one or more spectators, like when we encounter a work of art like a sculpture or a piece of music or a painting. There's a certain kind of meeting and connection that takes place, and from this a form of dialogue arises as well. And this brings me on to this German philosopher called Hans-Georg Gadamer, which I discovered, I think I might have spoken about this sometime in season 1, where I've been plugging and picking away at these remnants that I've been discovering of ideas, and always like trying to pick out, well, what is this way, the way of the showman? I always believed it was there, but I didn't know what I would find, so I sort of felt like I was picking it out. And we had a triangle eye, and I had these elements Anyway, it was with great excitement and enthusiasm that I threw myself over the works of this German philosopher Hans-Georg Gadamer, and found that his ideas is much more well developed and fleshed out than mine, but that I have been digging out an understanding of what showmanship and performance and what a show is that is very much along the lines of him, although his texts are perhaps even more impenetrable than mine. But anyway, it's always nice, even though I see that I am Johnny-come-lately to these ideas. I am finding now that I'm studying, looking a bit more on aesthetics and whatever, that my ideas are backed up by different philosophers. So I've eked these out and struggled so hard to get my head around them. And then, of course, I should perhaps just have read the greats ahead of me. But it's nice to know that I'm in good company. So, yeah, Hans-Georg Gadamer, he argued that something only becomes a work of art, that any object, like a picture or whatever, only becomes art when it becomes an experience for a human being. If it just hangs on a wall, then it's not actually art. It only becomes art in the process of interaction, of connection and dialogue that emerges from the meeting between the work of art and the human being. One could say that the piece, the picture hanging on the wall, does its work on the human being, and that is the work that the artwork does or signifies, or something like that. Anyway, it follows from this that a work of art only becomes art when it's an experience by a human being. It follows from this that to Gadamer, a painting on the wall only becomes a true work when a person stands before it, and when a meeting and a connection is made between the work of art and the experiencer. And this is in perfect concordance with the notion we explored as the essentials of showmanship. When a showman performs his act in an empty room, it is not a show, or using Gadamer's expanded claim, it is not actually art. The work only becomes art or becomes a show when the audience experiences and connects with the performance. No meeting, no show. The art arises in the meeting and experiencing of the work. And Gadamer goes on to say that for a work of art to be fully realized, it must produce a change in the person who experiences it. Something in the artwork must become internalized within the spectator. It doesn't have to be a divine epiphany that will change your life, or a change in emotional state, or a spark of a new idea or a new connection you'd never considered or are reminded of. That's enough. A change is needed of some sort, according to Gadamer. Viewed in this way, the dialogic nature of the encounter with the art is the thing which makes art art. Now, if we accept this concept, we can say that all art is rooted in this kind of meeting and this kind of dialogue that we've talked about now. And from this we can also then see the primacy and deep-rooted importance of this first image that we meet in the manifesto. This simple picture, the illuminated showman, is someone who faces the other way. And it's that the two sees each other. The audience and the showman sees each other. That the audience knows that the showman is presenting something to them which is meaning-bearing. He has something to say, as the manifesto goes on to say. So it's all very interesting, this stuff, and I found it a bit of a eye-opener when I started reading him and seeing my ideas pointed out to me. So this first image, one facing many. Now the one showman facing the many others with something to show, because this is what the manifesto says: a showman cries for attention and has something to show when he gets it. This is a picture of the whole process of showmanship. This simple picture is, to me, the most foundational description of what a showman is. It's a symbol laden with meaning. It contains the main components of showmanship, showman and audience, and their organization. The way they're standing is such that seeing this picture on a cave wall of a person facing a group of people, we immediately wonder what is going on between them. If the one was wearing a funny outfit like a peculiar hat with antlers or a strange body-altering costume, we would be further guided in our thinking about what's happening between the two entities, showman and others. The one facing the many is a meaning-bearing way of human organization. The meaning is at least twofold. One, facing the many, leads to interpretations of a leader, a priest, a prophet, an entertainer, a clown, or by our definition, a showman. All of that falls into that definition of showman. If we just flip the emphasis by flipping the word order to the many facing the one, then the meaning could get more sinister. A mob, a lynching, a judgment, a state crushing or pressuring an individual. And we will look how this dynamic difference might cast some light on the pressure and experience that goes with being one of the ones who faces the many, or faces the other way, who faces the way of the showman. Because it's all about face to face. Any genuine meeting between people happens face to face. This kind of orientation is the starting point for any communication of consequence. By facing someone, you offer and open yourself like a book. Face to face with a full view of each other's faces and bodies, you can read each other's most accurately. The showman and audience on a market day in a town square face each other in full view, in full daylight. And this is an uncomplicated real-life picture of a face-to-face, a full light meeting. If we change location to big tops, theaters and performance venues, we still have the basic structure, but the parameters have changed. The audience sits in rows in the dark, and sitting is more comfortable. The organization of the seats give them all a good view of what's unfolding in the ring or on the stage, and the fact that the ring is illuminated also makes it easier to see the performer, the one, in the ring rather than the many on the other side of the circus ring. Meaning you're seeing the performer in the ring as opposed to just looking right through it and seeing the faces of everyone on the other side. Because in this meeting, as is sort of indicated at the top, just what we just spoke about before, with that the showman needs to have something to show. That's imbalance. He's giving something to them, and the other way we see it more imposing when we think of the many facing just one person, all standing around looking at him. That could be sinister. So these modifications, they all point to a kind of directionality in the meeting. A show is not a normal conversation. There is room for interaction, there is room for improvisation and real in-the-moment conversation, but only to a limited extent. The reason the many are gathered is that they seek something valuable from the one. They want something special from the showman, which only he or she can offer. The audience expects to be shown something which will move them, which will, as Gadamer said, cause some change, I mean it in this reference to Gadamer's requirement that change is needed for it to be art. So that is obviously not spoken and not conscious, but I believe it lies in there. It's like part of the expectation of that you have something to show, which will affect them. So if somebody is moved, if they are moved, then it means that there has been some change in them. Their emotional state has been altered, preferably significantly for the better. And I believe that this is what an audience seeks. They want to be entertained, to forget about the moment and effortlessly be pulled into the world or engaging experience offered to them in the show. We'll get back to this in a later episode when we talk about art and entertainment, because I think this effortlessly being pulled in, I believe that to be a key aspect and a key phrase in what entertainment is. And the audience, though, is not completely passive, but they're also not the main instigators of the conversation. They come expecting that the time and attention and price of admission will ensure that the show leaves them enriched. They want their investment of time and attention to be valuable to them. That it makes them feel good, that it makes them think, that it makes them feel aroused or empowered or even angry. A show is a particular variation of a conversation with a certain slant and expectations as to which side needs to take the lead in making the conversation enjoyable and rewarding. In a regular conversation, the balance is much more equal. When the many faces the one is expected to do the talking, the showing, and the impressing. And this kind of differently weighted conversations happens in all art, be it music or painting or circus or ballet. And the deeper purpose of a showman, and indeed for all art, is to create an in-between place, a space of interest, a meeting place where something of value can emerge, that emerges from this particular type of attention that is being paid. The joint attention, and the showman or artist is the person expected to facilitate this value with their work and creation. And the value is in the show, the painting, the dance, or the violin concerto, like in a seed. This space of interest, area of interest, the in-betweenness, is where the seed is planted. And this area of interest is also that is the show, the thing that emerges in the meeting. That is where the seed is planted, and then the showman and the audience nourish it together to lush fruition. This kind of conversation, which the process of showmanship offers, has the potential for transcendence. And this transcendence is where I then see that it moves from a face-to-face to a heart-to-heart. Because it takes a certain kind of courage to open oneself and reveal something. And it also takes courage to take in and to take on what someone reveals. The kind of dialogue or conversation which is encouraged in the place of interest, the area of interest, the interest, is all-encompassing and important. It's a conversation which asks all participants to let go of some of their regular limits and boundaries and step into an expanded view of what another has to offer. To let oneself emerge, well, not emerge, but let oneself merge with an other. It's a kind of bold and daring thing. I know it from myself. I go and watch a show or whatever of something that you don't know what it is. You're reluctant in the audience, just like you are reluctant to let yourself go and really share of yourself when you come on the stage, to really be present. It's hard work. You could just go through the motions. That's so much easier. Or in the audience, you just, don't look at me. Don't turn the light on in here. I just want to sit in the dark and watch you like TV. But to let oneself merge with an other or others, this is at least as courageous of the audience as it is for the showman. It's then not a coincidence, perhaps, that at the root of the word courage, the English word, the courage, we find the word heart. Courage comes from the French and Latin word cœur, which means heart. And this is so apt for the kind of meeting that we're talking about here. If the many and the one are courageous enough to meet, we get a tightening, a leveling up in the depth from a face-to-face meeting into a heart-to-heart meeting. And these are the biggest and most courageous conversations that we dare have. They lead us out beyond ourselves into territories where we butt up against and blur the lines of ourselves as complete and separate egos. We access something more inclusive and something more human. In a heart-to-heart meeting, we really hear and we really feel the other. It is a particular way of connecting. And I think people have been connecting like that since these cave paintings that we imagined beforehand. People have stood up in front of others like this with something to share, and this particular thing is an ancient human thing. An illuminated showman's aim for his or her show is to transcend the face-to-face into a heart-to-heart, when truth is spoken and truth is experienced in the area of interest. The space between, it flourishes into a greater and deeper conversation. It becomes an act of meaning creation. So what's at stake in all of this? Well, when you meet a friend face to face, there is little to no tension. You might tell a story and your friend listens, and then there's some sense of sort of show and tell, but you feel no pressure. If you yell for attention in a market square and manage to make a few people stop and watch, the pressure rapidly escalates. A random person you don't know that's momentarily arrested because you started up a chainsaw or blew a whistle, they will need for you to deliver the goods quickly, or they'll walk away going, this is weird behavior and you've caught my attention, but I am probably going to walk away if this gets uncomfortable in any way. You need to be worthy of their attention, and they need to feel that, and you need to be able to deliver instantly and on command. From the point of view of the one, the many paying attention is intense. It's a rapidly escalating tension. Staring at a big group of people all staring back at you can be like a hare facing a flock of wolves. The tension which arises from standing alone, facing the others, is scary. Whether you become the focus of your tribe or a random group of strangers, whatever you do in this moment will be experienced and scrutinized by everyone. People will form an opinion instantly. If it is your tribe, you might have to live with the results of that moment from then on. The meeting that you're going through now becomes part of your biography. When you get everybody's attention and have nothing to show, or if what you have to show fails to interest them, you've failed in full view and full focus of everyone. They might laugh at you, or worse, they might not care either way. You do your best, and it still leaves you invisible. In the cave around the fire, the tribe has collectively made you invisible and irrelevant, and this is a terrible situation. Your best efforts not only weren't enough, the very fact that you asked for the attention and failed to hold it, failed to earn it or deserve it, can permanently lower your status in the tribe. You lost their attention, you lost your audience, and you are now a loser. The tribe remembers each failure. Each time you fail to keep their interests, you become more invisible, and it is harder to get the attention again. You quite literally become less in the eyes of the tribe. Being a showman is a risky business, and facing the others is a serious and nerve-wracking situation. Of course this is true, and it is also not true, because they also, of course, there's so much to gain, because they also remember it if you triumph, which raises you up in the eyes of the group, eyes of the tribe. But there is a real fear of facing others. This nervousness or fear is one of the first things that people think of when contemplating having to face a group of people. As soon as you step in front of them, you become aware of an instant, often crippling tension. In fact, it's probably more accurate to say that when someone tells you that you have to get before a crowd, the tension starts straight away. You can get a palpable sense of dread long before actually clearing your throat to speak or perform for the staring and judging faces. Chances are you might also have lost sleep and experienced loosened bowels in the night as well. So it starts before, long time before. Many studies, both formal and the kind of polls that you find in magazines, lists public speaking as not just one of the greatest fears, but the greatest fear. The great majority of people don't like being watched. They don't like the pressure of having everyone's eyes on them. It's the kind of thing that people have nightmares about. The spotlight hits you, everyone is looking at you, and they have expectations of you. You're completely unprepared and probably aren't wearing any pants. You wake in fright, covered in sweat, relieved it was a dream, only to remember that you have a presentation later that day. This is the fear of facing the crowd, the fear of public speaking, a terrifying social anxiety. Personally, I would rather rate losing a loved one as one of my greatest fears, or perhaps that I die, leaving my family behind to fend for themselves. But I guess I might be biased in this question, since I am a showman, which makes me practically impervious to this stage fright. That's not true. I get nervous too whenever I'm... Yeah, it's so long since I've been really terrified, though, to face a crowd, although the nightmares of arriving unprepared for a gig still wakes me up in the night. I too get nervous when I challenge myself, of course, presenting new material, perhaps doing something outside of my comfort zone. But there's a big difference between me being nervous or wondering why I don't just stick to my already worked out bulletproof material and complete stage fright. That can hit anyone. Even experienced performers can out of the blue be struck by stage fright. It is a basic fear response which triggers the fight and flight response. Psychologists call this fear of facing the others glossophobia. Glosso comes from the Greek word for tongue, but it refers to speaking. Glossophobia commonly means the fear of public speaking, and this is apparently a very common phobia. Some studies have shown it could affect up to 75% of the population. Now, most research into stage fright seems to be on public speaking, since it's the most common activity that people and professionals will have to present. It is just expected that an actor or musician's desire to be on stage overcomes the fear of being in the spotlight. So there's not so much work that I've found that sort of about this. But as performers, we know that the symptoms of stage fright are the same whether we are expected to do a speech or a non-verbal presentation. So glossophobia don't quite cover it. It is the act of standing before the crowd, presenting something, which can trigger this fear. The random person would not feel any less stage fright if they had to go up on stage and show everyone a dance. The fear can grab you even when you are before a camera with only one person behind it, or even if you, in our selfie culture, we can freeze up or find ourselves unable to speak naturally when recording ourselves on our phone. If we're gonna just say, here I am and this is all good, and you post it, you might feel really quite awkward, especially if you have to do a second take or whatever. Then all the magic is gone. Even just being aware of the fact that you will be watched in the future when you are not even there is enough for your heart to start racing. The eye of the camera capturing you for eternity can be as intimidating as a crowd. Regardless of what you're about to present, stage fright is crippling and holds you back from being the best version of yourself. Be it a piano recital, performing a dance, presenting a magic trick, or holding a speech, chances are that before starting, your heart races, you have butterflies in your stomach, your mouth is dry, terrible for musicians and magicians alike. You might discover that you're shaking uncontrollably, attempting to perform a sleight of hand magic or music when your hands are shaking like an alcoholic in the morning. It makes your chance of failure almost certain. Maybe not complete failure, but you won't be your best. Tension builds in your body in ways completely unlike your practice sessions, which basically turns you into a beginner again. Because not knowing your body, no longer knowing your body, all this fine tuning that you have done by rehearsing disappears because your body is no longer the same. This just happened the other day. I don't normally sing in my performances, but I did a show here just a couple of days ago where I did an introduction outside of the house, and then I did this as a pirate party thing, and I am making a pirate show, so it just fitted too well. And I did outside, I did an act, and I'm shouting and carrying on a street show style, and then all of a sudden I was inside, and I was going to sing this song, which I know very, very well, and it's all good, and I'm playing the guitar, but all of a sudden the increased tension I am imagining, I'm just making this up now, but like the increased tension in my throat, I was so tense in my vocal cords that I could almost not hit the deep notes. Then, of course, later on that night, I could hit it again, but something happened in the tension that was held in me that made me almost not able to perform the material, and I couldn't relax until I was like, what felt like halfway through the song. So this is just a very recent example of how these altogether new tensions in your body means that your preparations and fastidious practice just goes out the window, since you quite literally can't inhabit your body in a sort of recognizable way. It's like, so you become like a beginner again. The reason we practice is so that we will know the situation. When we all of a sudden stand before the crowd and the crushing tension builds, we behave, feel, and hold ourselves so differently that it makes you feel like the skill you're about to do is brand new to you. And I remember this vividly from my childhood. My first performance as a juggler in my father's magic show was pretty much a complete humiliation, balls bouncing everywhere. And to remedy this fear, I began, instead, we cut the juggling, but I began doing a quick juggle with 3 mandarins as a quick sort of aside during another routine. There was a routine I did where I needed to balance 1 mandarin on top of a volunteer's head. And then I did a sort of modeling balloon William Tell routine. I blow up a balloon that wasn't tied and then put the mandarin on top of another kid's head and let go, and a balloon that came straight towards the kid's face invariably made them jiggle their head, and the thing fell off, and I claimed to have hit it. Anyway, so because I was so nervous to do the juggling in the beginning when I was introduced as a juggler or whatever, I just started to get in the juggling, and I brought out the 3 mandarins, which I didn't need to. I gave them a sort of pretty gratuitous juggle before putting 2 in my pocket and placing 1 on the volunteer's head. And this ad hoc kind of feeling and presentation meant that some of the pressure was taken off me, because I was supposed to be doing something else, so the pressure was off. So then when my dad, the great Santini, introduced me as a juggler, and I stepped into the spotlight with my balls or devil stick, it was just too much pressure. So eventually I calmed down and could relax enough of my body tension, and stepping into the spotlight, and that tension became the same as in practice. Stage fright can manifest a slight nervousness at the very thought of public speaking, to a completely debilitating sickness-inducing panic and fear. Nausea to the point of vomiting is not unheard of. A very good friend of mine had to have a cheeky little vomit before we went on stage every night. It was almost became a little pre-show ritual. In the end, he veered off onto a side track along the way of the Showman so that he didn't have to face the others every night. Not all of us are meant to walk the way as a performer. Now, if these statistics quoted above, that 75% of us fears facing the others, this is a pretty good ratio for artists to audiences. Further, not everyone who aren't immediately afraid to stand before a crowd ends up becoming performers. They might never use their fearlessness before crowds for anything at all. Or they might become, salespeople or something of that nature, so using that lack of fear. Facing the others is a primal human fear. Facing this fear is part of the way for the one who faces the others, for the showman. Feeling the fear, experiencing it fully without giving into it, and facing it courageously is a necessary part of any showman's education. To face this fear, the showman must also face himself as well as the audience. Facing yourself. Now we're talking. To face others without fear, you must first face yourself. As we have explored earlier, the audience is an interconnected aspect of ourselves. We are also, in a way, part of the audience, so we must in that capacity watch ourselves. The one who faces the others is in fact not just facing them, but is also facing himself. The part of himself, which is them, is facing himself. He is the mirror held up to the audience, but he is also a mirror held up to himself. To prepare yourself for the pressure and the scrutiny of the eyes of the many, a showman must face himself both literally and existentially, practically and philosophically. This part of self-study, looking at oneself in the mirror, is particularly important in the when one is studying or learning something new. When I was a kid magician, I rehearsed in front of a mirror. In any practice of a craft, you have to do a lot of work, quite literally facing yourself or looking at yourself before you go and get on stage. Ballet and practically any kind of dance is taught in a room with mirrors all around. A dancer looks at herself in the mirror to align what the bodily experience of a straight-pointed leg and foot is with the visible experience that she can see in the mirror. We need to get these two things to align. Being a performer is about being seen, so a big part of the practice and preparation is to align one's inner experience of oneself with what we look like in the moment of performance, since the inner feeling of what you think you're doing or expressing might vary in ways that aren't beneficial. If you have a mentor or a director or a teacher, they can become an even better kind of mirror. They help shaping your outer expression, but a good mentor can simultaneously help developing and tune your interior as well, because there are different ways of kind of looking at when you're if you're critiquing something, then there's different ways of you can focus on what's wrong, but you can also focus as a mentor or whatever. You can focus on how to improve what was already there. How could it be made more effective or have greater impact or whatever? And that's what a mentor can do. Like when we look at ourselves, quite frequently we are our own worst critics, so we can be harsh at ourselves. But anyway, ultimately, we must learn to see ourselves from the outside, as the audience, sees us. To connect our inner feelings to our outer expression is only to reliably recreate what our teacher is showing us. In other words, we could say that part of mastering the craft is to substitute the mirror with knowledge of yourself and your outward appearance. And we must learn to reliably present ourselves to others in the ways that we desire to align our inner and outer worlds in a natural and effortless manner. I guess it's rather incontroversial to make sure that we know what we look like on the outside. And as we go on with this thing, and as we are already doing along the way, we're also focusing that our what's going on inside us. We'll get back to that again and again, but that is also obviously on show, and I believe that our intentions and this can be felt. We're going to get onto that in a later episode. But for now, let's look at video as a sort of mirror 2.0, because these days a video camera or a phone recording will tell you the brutal truth about your performance better than a mirror. There is a phenomenon where magicians practicing sleight of hand moves tend to blink. That is, like, physically close their eyes at just the moment the secret move is done. Quite literally not looking in the most crucial moment. If you do that, then, I know this from experience, then all of a sudden your move is starting to look pretty good because I'm just blinking just as I do it. This is easier to avoid when you're using video. The video frees you up from having to do two things at the same time. When you watch yourself in a mirror doing a false count with a deck of cards, you are both focusing on the practical execution of the move and simultaneously observing how it looks. With video, you can just watch. You can watch yourself as if you were watching another person doing it. No one is more critical about you than yourself, as I mentioned. If you watch yourself performing in a video taken on your phone and you don't like it, then the challenge is to rehearse more and fix whatever it is that you don't like. Like, there's got to be something that you don't like. Everything else can be changed. Identify what aspects it is that you don't like, then change those. If you are so critical that you hate everything, then just grab one of those things. Try to find what could you do here that would make it enjoyable for yourself to watch, or bearable and then eventually enjoyable. Then change those things. Criticize yourself again, fix and improve it, film it again, and so forth. And eventually you should be able to tolerate watching yourself. And at this point, chances are that you have an act which might be surprisingly strong, even for the simple reason that you feel very confident in what you've created. So this kind of looking at yourself is practical. It helps us express ourselves accurately. It calibrates the alignment between the idea, the emotion, or actions that we want to express with what the audience sees when we do it. The other way we must look at ourselves, to fight the fear of facing others, is an expansion of the practical alignment of our inner and outer on stage into a larger existential conversation, which I mentioned before here. So we have to existentially look at ourselves as well. Like, who are you? What do you have? What do you really have to show anyone? Why are you doing what you're doing? What does it all mean? We are here now at the starting point, not just of showmanship, but of philosophy, psychology, and existence itself. As we face ourselves with such questions, we encounter the conundrum of who we are. The ancient Greek maxim, "Know thyself," was written above the entrance to the oracle at Delphi. And there is no easy way to sum up in a sub-chapter in a book about showmanship. In fact, this whole text leading up to these very words and what follows are my incomplete answer to this question of knowing myself. Facing oneself is a lifelong project. The way of the showman is the result of my grapplings with this very question. Who am I? And what does any answer I give to this mean? Like we talked about last time, the 42. The way, the 42 and the what's it called? The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and all that. What does any answer I give to this mean? The way to answer this question starts with the lighting of the candle and the ignition of our greater enthusiasm, and finishes right at the end when the candle is snuffed out for the final time. And looking at ourselves is not something we do to get one particular answer, since, as I learned from a fortune cookie, to every complex problem there is an easy solution, but it's always wrong. To every complex problem there is an easy solution, but it's always wrong. It's the process of facing ourselves with a desire to understand that's important, rather than the specific answers. And the philosophical king who first brought this onto the scene of Western thinking was Socrates. The great Greek sage and quintessential philosopher. Socrates' reputation spread all over Athens and beyond. When the oracle of Delphi revealed that Socrates was the wisest man in Athens, because, as he said, as the oracle said, he knew how little he knew. When people came to ask Socrates about the secrets to life, the universe, and everything, he said he had no idea, but not knowing did not mean he gave up. He pursued the question and tried to find out if anyone else knew what was worthwhile in life. And after questioning and querying the people of Athens, who priests and politicians and anyone else who claimed to know. When they were questioned by Socrates, by the Socratic method, they were questioned to the point that it became clear that none who claimed to be wise could really explain to him what was ultimately meaningful. They were so tired, and he did this, pursued this exercise until they were so tired with his endless questioning that they decided to execute him. There's a lot more to that story, but you can read all about it somewhere else. For us, it's just interesting to note that Socrates, the wisest man in Athens, was prepared to admit his own ignorance rather than pretend to know something he did not. Along the way, Socrates, who claimed to know nothing, actually knew and understood many things, but the humility of this attitude is what I find important to note. Important is also his constant pursuit of what was worthwhile, not only to himself, but also in a more ultimate philosophical sense. Socrates was constantly seeking answers and considered himself a midwife, not for the body, but for the soul, from which he helped birth ideas. This was the aim of his method of asking questions. This again leads us to Socrates' famous claim that the unexamined life is not worth living. It is in questioning and exploration that answers are found. Answers which, as you dig deeper and climb mountains to expand your mental and real-world horizon, will change again and again. Knowing oneself is not something that is revealed in a pithy quotation. Wisdom is not about reaching a particular goal. It is a method for being in the world, a way of life rooted in the active interest we talked about in the chapter about the little candle. And it also is about living an examined life. Because ultimately, your competition is yourself. Little joy in life comes from comparing ourselves to others. We're all walking our own way. But man, it's hard not to look at others in real life or on social media and get envious of the achievements of others. Joy does not come from being better or worse than someone else. It comes from personal progress. As you advance in whatever you are doing, I am certain you will feel good about it. It's not other people who's your competition. You are your own competition. So, I want to talk a little bit about Janus, or Janus maybe it's called in spoken in English, but in Norwegian, as I knew this Roman god, his name is Janus, the two-faced god. A few years ago, a fellow showman, Mitch Jones, had gone back to university and was writing a paper for his course, and in it he was talking about power structures and magic, and anyway, he asked me if he could quote some of my writing from my blog, which of course I was very happy to allow. And in this paper he talked about the showman as someone who faced the other way, and he made a reference to the Roman god Janus, which is represented with two faces, so that he looks both forward and backward. And as soon as he mentioned this symbolic link, I saw just how interesting the connection was. And much like how the showman must face the crowd as well as himself, Janus looks both ways. Like Janus, the showman is not only facing the crowd, he is also facing the other way at the same time, looking forwards and backwards, inward and outward simultaneously. It is like being able to present your material authentically from your little fire of enthusiasm inside you, whilst being aware of others looking at you. It's harmonizing your outer action with your inner convictions and your will. The two-faced God is self-aware, so he can see himself and see himself as others sees him. He stands before the crowd, but is also facing inwards. He has gazed into himself to learn about himself, but in this inward looking, he has also come to see himself in the others. He sees them when he sees himself. The one who doesn't know himself has a hard time knowing others. In oneself, one finds the other. Through a recognition of shared humanity, he can know what to show. Janus was one of the few Roman gods without a Greek counterpart. To Romans, he was the god of beginnings and ends, and he was also the guardian of all doorways and gates. A doorway and any passageway goes both ways. It goes in and out. One of his symbols was a set of keys. He was thus the god of transitions as well as passages and endings. As a god of transitions, he was involved in matters of birth and death as well as journeys and traveling. And as we continue exploring the Showman, we shall keep his role, the Showman's role, as a gatekeeper and as a doorway where you're inviting people in and they're looking both ways. We're going, also like our roles as gatekeepers or as someone who guards and presides over letting others beyond a threshold. We'll keep all of this in mind. For the Showman too can be said to be the keeper of the keys to another place. So let's end this up by this is a long episode. We'll share a little couple, but the way of the one who faces the other way is so important, and I have a lot of things that are connected to that symbol, because I think that's what these texts and these episodes are. I'm talking about the things that comes up when I ponder this image. So let's just have a few thoughts about facing the world, because the way we face the world shapes not just our experience of the world, but it changes our reality, and that affects our future. And I don't mean this in a wishy-washy, touchy-feely kind of way. I mean literally, how you face the world affects your future and your reality. And this point was exquisitely described by one of my favorite poets, David Whyte, in a story that he told. I later found it in a book, but I saw it first in a conversation online. And you can find that if you search for it. I'll put it in the show notes. It's called The Poet and the Mystic. It's a mystic, which escapes my name. His name escapes me. The two of them are talking. Anyway, David Whyte, in this story, he emphasizes the importance of your face, or in facing the world. Because your face is, in a way, how you welcome the world and how you meet it. In life, you face the world. Your whole bodily expression and attitude, as well as the things you say, matters, but your face is the pinnacle of human expression. The story he told went something like this. David Whyte was having an afternoon get-together. The first guests arrived, and he stood in the door greeting them as they arrived up his garden path, and his 7-year-old daughter joined the poet at the threshold. She was shy with strangers, yet super excited to greet the guests, so she hid behind her dad's legs as he spotted the guests coming up the garden path, and I recognized this so well from my own daughter and that. Anyway, all the guests would see of this little girl was a little wave from behind the safety of the poet's legs. It takes little imagination to see how a hidden wave of welcome would have sparked sort of laughter and smiles in the people that came up. But then, to the poet's surprise, the child's shyness vanished as one particular stranger turned up. And the guest was a man who had grown up as a Jain monk, who had walked the world in deliberate poverty for years, just relying on other people's hospitality. And this man's face was so full of life and welcome that the poet's daughter left her hiding place behind her father's legs and ran down the path to meet him. And David Whyte says that she had never met this man before, and this newfound courage was a great surprise to her father. But looking at his old friend, he could see what she ran to. His face. His whole being was shining with such happiness that with one look you knew that this happiness could be yours as well. His face was a happy invitation. And the next person to arrive was, as Whyte describes it, a woman with a face that had been crushed by disappointment. But it was also the kind of face which was looking for more disappointment to corroborate its previous disappointment. And as is to be expected, the poet's daughter remained completely hidden, not even a little hand waving. And there it was, two faces coming up the same garden path, their faces preceding them and shaping what the world brought out for them. As a direct response to their faces, they faced two different realities. The face and countenance of one person gave them a smiling, excited child, a sweet and beautiful experience, an uplifting encounter of happiness and positivity, and the other person didn't even know what didn't run out to meet her. She didn't know what glorious positivity was hiding from her, just outside of her reach. And David Whyte tells that then, almost as if to drive the point home. When he came into the kitchen, the Jane monk and the disappointed woman sat next to each other, facing the door, and as he looked at them, the poet thought, these two have utterly different futures, just based on the way they are looking out at the world. One face will be getting all kinds of positive help, both visible and invisible help. And invisible help is the kind of help that you do not yet know that you need. The help that if you aren't paying attention, you will walk right past. The way we face the world, the literal face we have and the expressions on it, shapes the world for us. It shapes how our shows go. It shapes how the others facing us sees us. And it shapes what becomes possible from this meeting. The face can, of course, here be seen allegorically as the encounter of our entire self. The deep relationships between what goes on inside us and the way our face looks means that your face is a reflection of your inner geography, your inner self. You could always become an expert actor, study the face of happy, content, successful, open, well-liked people, and then try to copy them. But this will require a silly amount of work. A better solution is to strive towards achieving an inner state which generates a face, which naturally reflects someone at ease with themselves and the world. Cultivate an inner state which naturally places a sweet smile or a loving look on your face, and it will aid you in all the ways that matters, and it will seemingly conjure up visible as well as invisible help. And there we have it. We're coming to the end of another leg of this journey. Thank you so much for walking with me, coming along on this ride. And it has been brought to my attention that I have not asked any of you to write a review. During the first season, I kept remembering to ask for you to leave a review. So if you want to help support this podcast, it would be tremendous if you go to iTunes or wherever you download your podcasts and click 5 stars and even write a few words about something that you like about this podcast. Of course, if you don't like it, then why are you listening? No. Anyway, and thanks so much to all those beautiful people out there who have actually financially supported me on buymeacoffee.com/Captain Frodo. Every time I wake up and see one of those messages from you, it's really gives me strength in continuing this project amidst all the stuff that's going on. Doing this work is rewarding, but it's still I need to find the time, and these little reminders when some of you drop me a line, some of you have sent me emails, and some just in response to episodes or in conversations. It's really, really helps to keep on going. And anyway, please tell your friends if you like it. It's by far the best way to spread this podcast. Anyway, I'm not going to go on. I've said everything I need to say. So, with that said, all that's left to be said is take care of yourself and those you love, and I hope to see you along the way.